right, thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. And this is the final segment of today's program, talking about the verdict, our election coverage studio. And let me come to you, Mr. Oluwole Osaze Uzi. And this time I'm not putting you on the spot in terms of answering questions, but then INEC will have to answer questions all through this period. But I want to ask that today now we have, what, 5 days to the first election. There'll be a second one 2 weeks hence after that. Possibly, depending on what the results from the first one are or results from the second one, there may have to be others. But if you are in a position as you are today, and millions of Nigerians are watching and listening to you and are seeing this online, what would you say to them to look out for? What are the key points that you want them to take away and use so that they are able to vote with the least inconvenience, they are able to see that their votes are counted, and that at the end of the day, the process is free, fair, and as Prof said, the most recent addition is transparent?
First of all, we must give assurances, because I'm aware that there's a lot of maybe skepticism out there, that or there's a lot of things being said about, oh, it doesn't matter, your votes will not count, your votes don't count in these elections. I don't know why people say that. Maybe it's part of historical baggage, possibly, I don't know. But votes will count, all votes will be counted, and your votes will count. So it's to give the public the reassurance about that. I think the politicians know that, and that's why they've been crisscrossing the country. That's why they've been trying to look for ways of circumventing laws that regulate their activities. And for example, that is why we think that vote buying or vote selling, voter inducement has become quite seductive, because they know that you need to go, before all you had to do was in Nigerian English, settle the politicians, settle the officials, and you're home and dry, maybe just write results. But truly, 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 there have been incremental benefits to the system. And I think the politicians realize that first before most other people, and that's why they do the things that they do. They induce the voters, knowing that you're taking your PVC, you're going to the polling unit, casting your votes can and will make a difference. So basically, it's to give the assurance to people that at least this time, I think it by and large did in 2015, and we have promised that we'll improve upon all that we did in 2015 to make 2019 a much better election than it was in 2015, so that at least it should reflect the will of the Nigerian electorate. That's the assurance we can give to people.
Now, before I leave you, I want you to point to the issue of, because you alluded to there, that's why politicians don't like their activities circumscribed. The votes are beginning to count. There's something about the placement of things in the polling area. Earlier, we've talked about the change from the thumb to the index finger. Now, I want you to point out, and that was one of the things I was hoping you were going to do when I said the things to watch out for, where the ballot box is. Where it is, you go and thumbprint, and then come and put in the ballot box in the open.
Particularly as now you have that same accreditation and voting.
Voting going on simultaneously.
So what are we going to expect at the box?
Okay, immediately you get to the polling unit is to join the queue. And unlike 2015, but like the off-cycle election since the run election in Bayelsa, we've had continuous voting, accreditation and voting. So some other people who have not witnessed the off-cycle elections or by-elections will probably not know that. So it's important that they realize that. And let me correct an impression. You can use any finger. You can use your thumb or any finger to indicate your choice. So some people use their pinky finger if they so choose. But the point is that they should ensure that the mark stays within the box of the party of their choice. Because if it crosses the line, if it crosses the border, then it's difficult to say who you actually wanted to vote for. So that is an invalid or spoiled, it's an invalid ballot, and we'll put aside, it will not be counted, even though most part of it on one side, once it crosses that line, it's difficult to say. So we can use the index finger, any finger you so choose. So that is what we try to tell them, and just follow the simple instructions. As for the folding of the ballot paper, we've trained the presiding officers to fold it when they hand it over to you. So just watch them as they fold it inside, roll it, And when you get it, you flatten it. And your polling unit, we've tried to put the cubicle quite close to the boxes that where you drop your ballot paper into, just because we don't want a long distance as it used to be. That's an opportunity for people to show how they voted. So all those who try to bribe voters don't have an inkling about how you voted. Because under the Electoral Act, it's a criminal offense for anybody at all, including the voter, any person, there's a word used by the Electoral Act, who compromises the secrecy of the ballot. So I think everybody should be aware of this.
So before we move on to something else, we're now talking about the day itself rather than the history and the things surrounding the election. There's something going on social media, online, where it says you have to carry additional identification beyond your PVC. So perhaps if your PVC cannot be read by the card and they want to make sure it's really you and all that, clear it up for viewers tonight. In terms of your election checklist, do you need to carry any additional identification to the polling booth?
Other than your PVC?
Other than
no,
the
certainly
PVC?
not.
Yeah?
The law does not recognize any other identification. It's just your permanent voter's card. And anyway, we think that the permanent voter's card is superior to all other means of identification in any case that you can use. But the law says take your permanent voter's card. It's only your voter's card that will count. Even if you brought your international passport or driver's license, that will not suffice.
Okay, Professor Maman, could you speak to the issue of the crisis of expectations? Because when we look at the 2015 election, 2011, one of the things that came out of that when it was being analyzed was that people would do anything to ensure that their own party or candidate wins. And so there's a crisis of expectation at the poll, and that same crisis plays out when results are being collated. So speak to that issue and whether you see that as something we're going to go through on Saturday from the political calculation that you can see now.
Well, true, Nigerian politicians go into elections the way students write examinations. If they win, it is their efforts. If they lose, it is their teacher who failed them. So we don't give an opportunity for people to understand that, look, you go into an election to win or lose. So if a person loses, the most important thing is for a person to lose fairly. Look at the process. If it is fair, the managers have conducted themselves and the elections properly, they should be able to accept the results. And once they have that frame of mind, there shouldn't be any crisis of expectations. And the message will still go down to the electorate if they are prepared to live with that prospect of win or lose. But the kind of impression one is getting is that it's one of desperation, and that's why we have some of information coming out now of recent about some fake polls, some claims about rigging or not rigging, in order to prepare ground that, look, if somebody, a particular party fails, they feel they've been cheated out of the process. But it is inappropriate, because what we need to look out for, as we've been talking about this evening, is a very credible process. Once we have a credible, transparent process, then the politicians and the electorate certainly will live with the result. And after all, we are talking about one Nigeria, nobody can be wished away. And so that's it.
All right, then. Again, Prof, I come to you about this as your last word. So what I want you to do is two things in one, and the same with you, Mrs. Benite. The first is, people have talked about party agents. If INEC gave a deadline, I think that deadline is today, that, parties are not submitting the names of party agents for the number of polling units that Professor Dinkalu mentioned. The calculations of how much that will cost, even to be able to put together that list and the passport photographs and all of that and send to INEC, would probably scare off some of the 90 political parties, as it has, obviously. But does this say something about what is going to happen at those polling units and the issue of credible or non-credible results? I mean, if you went in there to see the process, then anything you say, people can discredit.
And would it be a crowded booth? You're looking at representation for 91 parties.
Or at least 73 who are on the ballot.
That's one question that hasn't really been answered. You know, what that calculation would be at the booth.
Well, let's be quite frank with ourselves. Many of those parties are synthetic, artificial, plastic parties that can't really perform as political parties. They don't have the wherewithal to sustain, say, agents. Of course, the testimony or the evidence of agents are admissible if you have a dispute in a tribunal. But if there's no representation from the parties, then, of course, as you make your bed, so shall you lie on it. Now, but I want to say that in closing this segment, that we've moved somewhat. We are not now threatened or terrorized by those who want to pour acid into ballot boxes or who want to capture ballot boxes or kidnap candidates. I think we have a little bit gone beyond that. I think the ultimate thing we should be working towards, here again I agree with Mrs. Benite, 2023, so that you will have e-voting. So we won't, all this thumb printing is...
Electronic collation.
Electronic transmission, collation. So before the end of the day, we have the results as is done in advanced democracy.
A lot of people were looking at the whole Brexit, you know, confidence vote. It happened in the morning, in the afternoon, breaking news.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And we have to learn. Look at the United States 2 years ago. Donald Trump was bragging that if he loses the election, it means the election was rigged. That the only thing to test that election was free and fair is if he won. And when he won, he was congratulating himself. So what I'm saying is there's nowhere where you have no threats or doubt about this. We have just to up our act and make sure that we don't only make sure the elections are conducted fairly and credibly, but transparently, so that every passerby will have vote of confidence in what we are doing.
Mrs. Benite, you have 45 seconds.
Well, for me, Saturday marks the beginning of whether we are serious as a democracy. And Saturday is a serious business. And to the APC-led government, you have to show precedent. The international committee are watching. This is connected to our future investments and all partnership that we will have. It is critical that we allow the election to be fair, free, and now transparent. And above that, Nigerians, it is not a do and die affair. At least all of us believe in God, whether a Muslim or Christian. So you can't be dying, and when God asks you on the other side, he said, oh, I died because of an election. For how much? Be peaceful. PDP, APC, all of you, be peaceful. We want our country to be free after 2019 Saturday election. So we appeal to everyone. Pastors, speak to your people. Imam, on Friday, speak peace, not war. We are one people, one country, and that's what we have signed for. And make sure that nobody uses you to become a nuisance on that day. And parents, draw your children's ears and try and hide that alcohol from them so that peradventure don't come to the place drunk. I think there should be a law about drunkenness on election day also.
That's
so
why
that is
get off the track and misbehave.
That is, those are very salient points to end this very stimulating discussion on. Professor Chidiodin Kalu, former chairman, National Human Rights Commission, Professor Tahir Maman, Vice Chancellor, Bayes University, Mr. Oluwole Osaze Uzi, Director of Voter Education in INEC, Professor Akin Oyebode, Professor of Law, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Ado-Ekiti, and finally, but definitely not least, Mrs. Juliet Benite, Director of Programs, the only woman on the panel, but certainly not letting that stop her from getting a point. We want to thank all of you for joining us today. Gemma, there's only time to say goodbye. Yeah, there's only time to say goodbye, but just to remind them that when you send in your PVC photographs, your location and your name, so we can, you know, take stock of what we're doing. Good night. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Good night.